had like a dude in a bathhouse who was like trying to show me his dick because the bathhouse is apparently like
put it out there.
making him real spry.
Yikes.
Is this your first time to the baths?
How are you liking the game?
I like it a whole lot. I feel like there's been a boom of these like old school CRPGs in recent years, and I love the first Pillars of Eternity and recent games like Divinity being great, and I was kind of a little nervous with this one, just of like, oh, is it going to just kind of be more of the same? But the sort of like the archipelago in this one, the Deadfire archipelago, where you have your ship, is like really added this whole extra layer to the game that like I think these other games don't have, where you just have this freedom to explore kind of like however you want. Yeah. And I think that really like opens up this game in a way that like other CRPGs haven't.
Right.
Agrasima. I will make this quick. I have heard some marvelous tales regarding your ventures in the Deerwood. In fact, you are the first dragon slayer I have ever met, outside of a grave.
Because I don't play a whole lot of these games, like I definitely played Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 way back in the day, and I've been dabbling with all the new ones that have come out. I do find it kind of interesting that like Divinity Original Sin 2 starts in a boat, when you're imprisoned in one, but then then this one is the thing that gives you the freedom. But I mean, the games are fundamentally very different, I think, despite being somewhat similar from the outside.
Oh, definitely.
Looking in.
Yeah.
And I'm finding myself enjoying Pillars quite a lot. I've maybe about 10 or so hours in right now, and I have my boat. I haven't named it because I didn't know you could do that. But there's a lot of things I don't know that I can do in this game. The scope is huge. And now that I can go pretty much anywhere, it feels like, wow, like I need so much time just to like relax and really soak in this world. And when I do have that opportunity, that's when this game's really at its best.
Right.
And I'm really liking it a lot.
It is really cool how the boat lends itself to kind of going almost wherever you want to. There's suggested areas, but you were actually talking to me earlier about how they have like a level syncing system, so you can literally just have the game be completely open.
Right. Yeah. So the game
to.
has like difficulty, like where they'll, you know, you go to a certain island and it's like, hey, this is like 5 levels above you. You're probably gonna die, and you can still try and do it. In some cases, I actually succeeded one time. So like if you're good enough, you can still like overcome those odds. But typically that's the way the game kind of like gates it off from like you being able to do whatever you want. Sure. But the game also does have like a pretty robust difficulty, so you can kind of like adjust everything if you're just someone who cares more about the story, and you can turn difficulty scaling on where it just sets everything to your base level, which I imagine would just kind of change the critical path of the game, where you could just go sort of wherever you want at any time.
I would have to imagine you need like certain characters in your party or certain events to have transpired to like, you know, trigger like a story event in a location.
I imagine the major stuff, but as far as like just random islands that have like really high rank, you know, like bounties
and gear and stuff.
And stuff. It seems like you could potentially just like go wherever you want. And even then, without that leveling stuff, like I'm playing on Classic right now, the game is rewarding enough where I did do that, and I still was able to beat it, and I got like a really nice reward. So the game like encourages you to try and explore and experiment and like see if you can overcome these like odds.
Yeah, I'm playing on Classic. I get my ass kicked whenever I try to board another boat. Maybe it's just like the roll of the die, like I'm getting like, you know, really tough opponents or something, but the ship combat I'm able to succeed in. So I feel confident in doing that. That said, it also just feels a bit obtuse to me. I'm not exactly sure. You know, I can see what my boat has, right? I can see the cannons, I can see how many people there are on it. I can see how my boat is positioned to the other boat. But you have this sort of like turn-based command system for naval battles that has me a little bit confused. Like I'm always making decisions, but I'm never sure if they're the right one. So often they end up being the right one, but I'm not really like using any sort of like critical info to make that. It's more like instinct.
Yeah, it's instinct. It feels a bit rock, paper, scissors, where it's like, okay, well, he hasn't fired in 2 turns, so I should brace because he's probably going to fire next turn. Oh no, he actually didn't. Now I should fire. And like kind of like this balance of like I should get closer so that I can shoot my chain shot to destroy their sail so I can board them. Like there is some like experimentation, like variety to it, but you're right that you kind of have to like figure it out for yourself. There's a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, the game has a lot of systems. Not all of them are explained like all that well, but that's also part of the charm. Like I feel like there's a lot for me to excavate out of this game, right? But I'm still able to make progress even though I don't know everything, which feels really good.
Yeah, it's still a really good time to kind of just go through, even though like I'm also kind of confused when I'm going through it, but it doesn't feel like I'm completely lost at any point in time. which is great. And I have a hard time kind of like not thinking of Divinity 2 while I'm playing it a lot, even though like they don't have like the naval combat and everything.
Right.
Just the way that turn-based combat system works, it's a little bit different from this, but I like how it encourages a lot more kind of experimentation. I feel like there's a lot more to the world in it, but they're both good games in their own right, and I feel like it's a much more serious kind of hardcore role-playing kind of experience, and I like that I can kind of like get more enveloped into it, and I feel like I'm more of a part of something that's much more
part of a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like some of the best things in the game for me is like when I'm traveling along and all of a sudden it pulls me into a little cutscene. It's like you hear bells ringing. You're like, I know what that means. And it's like the gods like pulling you into like the nether realm to talk to you and sort of like debate amongst each other about what they should do, and you're just sort of this pawn looking up at all of them. I mean, this is all done with like still images, right? With, you know, pretty good voice acting and very good writing as well.
You fall wildly, endlessly, unable to find your bearings or slow your spin. And in the distance, above, no, behind you, comes an insistent ringing. You angle yourself toward it, searching for the sound.
Those illustrations like pop up all throughout the game, and those are some of my favorite moments because they offer these very like D&D style like, what are you gonna do? Like one of the first ones you get is like their classic, like you see a wagon on the side of the road, like are you gonna, hail them, or do you like, what are you gonna do? But then you have like weirder stuff like I'm gonna go into the sewer and I'm gonna crawl up the sewer and then like come out of a toilet so I can sneak to the second floor of this house.
Everything's very unusual. Like all the concepts they present, the little ideas and locations, and like what you just described. That's not what you'd expect from a typical fantasy game, and this definitely eschews like the typical fantasy stuff. It starts off with a little bit of that, then very quickly becomes something else.
Totally.
The darkness, the seriousness, it all kind of works really well. There have been a couple like cheeky moments, but nothing that is like outright hilarious.
Definitely in the side quest you get more to that.
Right.
I had like a dude in a bathhouse who was like trying to show me his dick because the bathhouse is apparently like
put it out there.
making him real spry.
Yikes.
Is this your first time to the baths? The cost is high, but so are the delights. I might have the skin and bones of a retired scarecrow, but the waters bring youth back, where it counts.
I think what I've been enjoying the most is just the level of options I have in quests. I feel like every quest I come across, I have like at least 5 different ways it can play out.
Totally. Like there was one time I was meant to help a prison guard. She was like, look, I'm in charge of the prison, but I'm also in charge of the streets. And we don't have enough guards to like take care of things because these other bandits are somewhere else. So I need you to go hire those bandits to like watch the streets for us. So I go and I hire them, and I come back, and before I finish talking to her, I talk to one of the guys in the cells, and he's like, oh, me and the guard go way back. She's got me in here because she doesn't like me or whatever. And I returned the stuff to the guard, and I was like, I feel like I like this prisoner more than I like this guard. So I killed the guard. And he was like, you've branded yourself a murderer now, but that said, I'll help you out on your boat if you want some help. And then I was like, oh, cool, I can recruit people by doing things that seem optional. The game never asked me, do you want to kill the guard? It was literally something I decided just to do on a whim because I felt like, well, maybe she has a key and I could use that key, and sure enough, she did. There has been no reaction after that. Like, no one is talking about me like I'm a murderer, even when I'm running around that first area. No one seems to know. So I don't know how that's going to work out. I imagine, like, there's a decision you make early on, right, where you choose to save a guy or a crate of items from falling off a boat.
Right.
There's no immediate payoff for that if you save the guy. I think down the road there'll be a payoff, just like with this guard. Like, I'm sure down the road I'll run into a boat who has someone who recognizes the guy who was in jail and say, wait a minute, if you're with him, then you're a murderer. Like, I'm hoping that happens.
Hey, fancy seeing you here. I can't see much of anything, really, apart from you. Just endless gray. What happened?
There's so many like different options
Yeah.
you can do, and I think that's like ultimately like why I'm so engrossed in this game is I feel like it is tapping into that itch of like an incredibly well-written RPG that just has like seemingly like endless options and like amazing characters. Like we barely talked about like the party stuff, but like I think the characters so far are like really interesting, and when you're walking around and they're talking to each other, like it reminds me of like old BioWare games in a way that I love.
Yeah, I mean, are you guys more into the main story or the side stories at this point in terms of like what's pulling you along? Because I'm I want to know a lot about the secondary characters in my party and how they play into the bigger story. Because right now it feels like it's just about me.
Yeah.
And I want to know why they might be important.
Well, for me at least, it's like 2 of my side characters are characters from the previous game.
Right. Okay,
And-
that's true. Yeah, I didn't play that.
Yeah, and that's something I've also really liked. Where Divinity 2, I really like it, but that game takes place like 200 years later.
Yeah.
And so there's connections to the first one, but you're not continuing the same character. This game is like Baldur's Gate 2, where it's a direct continuation. You're the same character, you have the same party members.
Right.
It remembers all your choices, and so it feels like it's this like continuing like epic like fantasy saga with this one character. And that to me is something that I personally find like really
Yeah.
like that's what I want. Like as someone who liked Baldur's Gate and liked like Mass Effect, where it's like, oh, I can keep playing and like having it grow and build over time. Like that's what I look for in an RPG.
Yeah, so now I'm not sure, like, do I wait for the Switch version to keep playing this, and in the meantime, play the first pillars, as you suggested earlier today, because I don't have all that context. The game does a really good job of setting up, like, or at least showing you what events happened, right, through text, and, you know, there's some, like, minor cutscene stuff. Like, I have an idea, but I don't have that personal connection. I'm missing that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I think like you could totally get away without it, but at the same time, I think the game does
Rewards
benefit
it.
from it,
Yeah.
and the first game I think still holds up really well and is absolutely worth playing for sure.
Yeah. Cool. I've got to run, guys. Leave you to it.
See you, man.
See ya.
See ya.
Dude, he's not there anymore.
Jean-Luc. That's the pillar of eternity.